Hey, take your magnifying glasses out for cinema recap, because today's criminal find is the gifted hands. Spoilers ahead. Looks like someone's busy making art. Are you the Banksy of Korea? This guy's preaching all the good stuff, gaslighting everybody in the room that they're just a networking marketing company, rather than a pyramid scheme ploy. Then he announces someone as the star employee. But some cops roll in, arrest him on the charges of investment and employment fraud. Well, this dude tries to sneak out, but the exit's blocked. So he grabs a pair and claims to be an undercover cop. Later, the ball-busting cop gets scolded by his superior for being involved in a pyramid scheme. He gets all the smacks, but he protests that the pay in their department is quite the dog feces. So he really needs a side hustle. Detective Yang CHOON-DONG is given a brief standing ovation before he walks away. Oh boy, back to the dark alley. Is this Lush Sucks or something? Gotta admit, the pretty boy had some art skills, up until the point where Yang shows up and just urinates all over his work. He reprimands the little rascal vandal, and then his eyes suddenly glow up, realizing he's a cop. Cool superpower, but that's nothing to spray to Yang's face. Yang goes back to the station, and since he's on duty, he's gotta take care of a mother missing her child. So he tends to her, but she breaks down due to worry. For today's briefing agenda, Yang brings up the subject of the missing child. He thinks it might be a kidnapping, but they argue about the priorities cases at hand, since they're low on resources, specifically manpower. The meeting adjourns, and Yang's boss actually allows him to go after the case. Anytime, anywhere, any place, the super sleuth is on the case. He goes around asking random people about the girl, but then he gets smoke security footage to study. It's the dead of night, and some ne'er-do-wells smoke it up. Then some dude pees on the ground. Is that gonna be like a regular thing for this movie, or? Well, then he discovers that he unearthed a human eyeball. Rise and shine for full-on police investigation. Yang arrives late to the scene, and it sucks for him because there's confirmation that the body is the missing little girl. Right on cue, the mother sees the scene. Of course people are gonna riot outside the station, and Yang's boss was chewed up by a higher officer. Yang got the short end of the stick from all this because apparently he's going to be suspended despite emphasizing on this case. Makes me mad. But then he has to take the case again. Moments later, Yang is seen lamenting over his failed case. Then much later at his home, he catches the news as a refresher for his memories. He thinks the graffiti he saw the other day might be sus, so he visits the graffiti site. And there he compares police photos to graffiti art. And it seems like the art is telling a recap of the entire crime. Hey, it's my job. Well, the nice old lady gave me my job back by interrupting. She paints over the art, but Yang needs the evidence, so they get into a bit of a grapple and the lady wins. So Yang takes some pictures with his phone instead, and round 2 begins. Later, while investigating the photos, a kid actually finds the building he was looking for. So he zooms off, but not before giving a whistle to alert the public if something nasty happens to her. She leaves, and Yang is free to investigate the building. The building looks like an old factory, littered with pipes, chains, and iron. He goes from one corridor to another, and he stumbles upon a dresser. Inside is clue numero uno. He finds the now dead missing girl's school bag. Cue jump scare. The detective kisses a bottle to the head. The hoodie dude escaped, ensuing a chase. He went in for a hot pursuit, but he was just too fast. Left him in the dust. The good news is the police did find new evidence. The bad news is the task force takes the credit, not Yang. Despite all that trouble, his superiors reprimand him for going into duty despite his suspension. So he panics a bit, talks about the hooded guy who assaulted him, and the pictures he took of the graffiti. But of course, he just comes out looking bad in this whole process. At the strike of nighttime, Yang is seen attending his night shift, but on his desk, he remembers that he snagged the paint can that he was sprayed with a few days ago, and he sees it's from a place called Soul Art Supplies. Sometime later, he goes to borrow a car from a good buddy of his, a food salesman. He refuses because he's in a tight spot, but Yang uses other convincing methods. Just like that, free car. His friend tells him that he's got a hunch that the perp might be a guy living alone. Immediately, he points him to the direction of the art supplier that he was looking for, and off they go. They ask the owner if someone bought any big piles of spray cans, but sadly, they're near an art school, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint. There was one guy that the owner did recall looking somewhat fishy. There was a hooded figure before who asked to exchange the cans due to the wrong delivery. This and his address was all Yang needed. Yang infiltrates the place and he finds the man. There's our boy. The dude remembers him as the public urination guy, so Yang begins to fire questions like, why did he kill her? Too bad it's the wrong guy, cause he doesn't freeze his trash like the frozen girl. Later at a stakeout, they tail Hoodie Man to him painting quite the scene. He runs, but they hold him down. They find out his name is Kim Jun, so they ask him of his suspected accomplice in the missing girl's crime. He doesn't respond, so they look at his phone, only to see the name of Kim Seung-ki. Yang asks Homebase for a background check on this name. Next day comes. Yang is spying at another hooded figure. People feeling hoodies in Korea. Well, he checked out the garbage and yeah, it's frozen this time, just like the dead girl. Yang immediately apologizes. Girl boss energy. So the misunderstanding is that Seung-ki is just Jun's friend, nothing more. But our man suspects further, due to the portrait signed by Jun. Later, Yang's friend is bashed in his own truck and Jun has escaped. And later, all the cops are called to the station, so Yang arrives at the scene of the little girl being interviewed because she almost got kidnapped. She says she was lured in by a puppy, but the puppy was frozen. Hey, it's that kid that has the whistle. Oh, this can't be good. The kid makes a break for it, but the perp is hot on her tail. She runs home to her good-for-nothing drunkard dad and tattles. He doesn't see anybody behind her, so she gets scolded hard instead. Poor kid. She felt like she was being tailed, but the perp is already behind her. She still whistles, but alas. The day comes around, and an investigation is underway. Yang's devastated to learn it was the kid who showed him the building. So he freaks out. At Jun's lair, he's already being evicted, but Yang charges in with rage and asks how he's painted the crime-related graffiti. Ju says it was pure imagination. Yang's desperate for answers, so he beats it out of him. Suddenly, his eyes glow and he seems to have the memories of his dead brother. Creepy on how he recreates his exact words, too. So Yang wusses off. At night, he laments over the memories of his dead brother. There's the little girl. She's been caged in with that dog. And needle alert, there's the sicko. And he grabs that dog and injects it with something. Sicko tells her not to scratch her scar or might get infected. You know what? I hope you get infected. Speak of the devil, there's already missing posters of the little girl all around. Looks like Yang visited the art class probably to interview the teacher, Seung-ki, again. Of course, in exchange, he gets to be the student's art model. He has a little fun with the kids, but then the class ends and the children are free to go. Seung-ki and the detective have some privacy. So Yang's asking her about a painting of the building that Jun made. She says the building's painted from an aerial point of view. She's asking where it's from. So Yang says that it's from a painting that Jun did that predates the murder of the missing girl. Yang also reveals Jun never left about it, and Jun might have some mystical mumbo-jumbo powers cause he suddenly knew Yang lost his brother as a kid. It's rewind time. During a not-so-long-ago summer, Jun was sketching up the portrait of Seung-ki when suddenly some douchebags arrived. The bully essentially knows about Jun's rumored powers of premonition, so he bothers him by slapping his easel and then slapping him next. But a female canine, Seung-ki comes to the rescue by threatening to call the teachers, but the numbskull is gonna slap her. Jun catches the slap, but also activates his powers. He found out the dimwit pissed his pants before, so he begged to transfer to a new school. Yang is shocked by this revelation, so a little research should be helpful. He reads about psychometry, and he remembers that Seung-ki said that there was an accident that involved Jun. Brace for another flashback. Jun confronts his mom about his powers, so his mother's surprised by this. She says she's got to finish work first and then they'll talk about it, but Jun suspects she might be in the prostitution business, so he asks for her hand to see, but she refuses. This results in a truck ramming her to her demise. Surprise! Guilty nightmares have come to haunt Jun once again. That's not the only thing visiting him tonight, as Yang comes by, bringing some snacks. Yang peacefully offers some snacks, but Jun wants him to piss off. Suddenly, the walls come crumbling down. and they're here to make June homeless. They beat him up, force him to sign the documents needed, but Yang gets involved. And he poses as June's older brother, and the two fight off the repo men. Finally, some genuine concern. Yang's about to leave and asks to talk later, but he collapses, and June takes care of him. He couldn't resist, so he reads his memories. Yang gets up and eats, and as a final gift, June asks how he could help. Yang gives over some pieces of evidence, and he's curious how he knew about the crime. So, June calls in a bird and says he got their memories. That's how the aerial view of the building's painting came to be. Yang's jealous of June's handy bird trick, so he's asking how he did it. Well, it's a simple practice, duration of 4 years. Going back to the case at hand, he concentrates while holding the evidence, and he can see the girl's memories of being baited, captured, pictured, and probably emotionally scarred. June gets into a mental state of shock while Yang makes sure he's alright. Back at the station, the task force discusses their findings so far. The freezer being used in the crime must be for commercial purposes. Well, everyone freezes for a moment when Yang comes in to tell his findings. The chief gives Yang a chance to offer his findings. He disguises his supernatural sources as they're from a lab, and June deducts toy plastic balls being tinted from the victim's clothes. These deductions lead them to focus their investigation on daycare centers. Just as they were at the end of their line, Yang's friends point out another source of commercial freezers and ball pits. Yang speaks with the owner and asks to check his phone, but he immediately pours water on that phone to break it on purpose. Yang and the owner get into a fight and they crash the car. The perp is taken into an interrogation room, but the chief says they have to let him go since he was out of the country when the incident happened. Another problem arises as one of the missing girls' mothers is found dead on a playground, and they suspect it might be suicide. Looks like we found our perp before the cops then. He's got a sadistic streak. Yang's being pressured how he got that information, but he made a promise to June not to snitch. Sadly, the cops capture him and Yang is forced to interrogate him. He's forced to make June use his powers, but he goes into shock. The force rushes in to ask him what he saw, but he feigns a confession. The cops take him away and he takes the fall. Later, a car accident occurs, and Yang is held at gunpoint by June. He tries to shoot his own hand, but Yang manages to save him. Yang convinces him to go on a last run to catch that kidnapper. Yang's friend finds a fridge depot, and there, the colors are revealed as June scans them one by one. He finally finds the fridge that was used in the crime. There's our bad guy, and it looks like he's about to feed the girl, but she locks him in and makes a break for it. Somewhere else, our boys in blue got the address. I hope they get there on time because that villain shakes free. The two boys get to the suspected building, so they have to try every door. June couldn't sit this one, so he sneaks out and joins the search. Unknowingly, he's with the perp in the elevator. He even recognizes his laugh. June texts Yang to go to the 20th floor. He tries to find Da Hui, the little girl. Suddenly, June is cornered by the perp because only his apartment is on the 20th floor. June calls, but it was all a ploy to ambush Yang. It's time for our final showdown, and despite the stab wound, Yang gives it his all. Too bad he's too injured to fight, and our perp confesses that he kills children for sadistic fun. As he was about to give Yang the killing blow, June comes in for the save and drives the perp out of the window. He holds on to the perp until he finds Da Hui. After that, Yang actually saves the perp. June says that Da Hui's on the first floor, bets freezer. The backup arrived to search the clinic. They managed to get there on time and save the little girl. Seems that Yang is fine in the hospital. After he's discharged, he learns that June actually swung by before. Later, he goes to June's place, but no sign of June. Eventually, life goes back to normal. He drives by some graffiti, where he finds June's handiwork. This was The Gifted Hands by M Pictures. Until our next premonition, ciao.